Welcome to the Men After God podcast, where you will be challenged and encouraged as you pursue God, achieve success, and raise a thriving family. Join your host, Dustin, and his guests on a weekly journey to grow as husbands, fathers, and men after God. Here is your host, Dustin Alley.
Hey guys, welcome back to another great episode of the Men After God podcast. I love getting to interact with men from all across the world in various different walks of life and in various different journeys, but all of them have one thing in common. They are men after God. There's no cookie cutter way to follow Jesus, and I want you to know that, because when you find yourself trying to live like someone else, you're never going to know who God created you to be. And at Men After God, we want to help you discover who you are in Christ, what God's called you to do, and how we can help you get there. And that's also the heart of the man I've got with me today. His name is Kevin Elworth. He runs a successful coaching business, but that's not what he's always done. He's followed Jesus for his life, and he's ended up in a different path than maybe he even originally planned. But throughout all of it, he's been faithful, and he loves the Lord. He loves his family, and he's here to add value to you today. So, Kevin, thank you so much for being with us today, man.
And my pleasure. Thanks for having me. I'm excited about this process.
Oh yeah, man, it's going to be a great day. So let's start off, man. We're all men after God. We all usually have a family, and you've got a beautiful family. Talk about them for just a minute.
Love my family. We have 5 kids, and my wife and I have been married for 20 and a half years now.
Wow,
and,
congratulations. That's awesome.
It's a story in its own. We have 1 biological son and then 4 adopted children that came to our home in multiple different manners and means, and foster care, a little bit of private adoption in the mix. We've got a couple other foster kids that are out there that had spent some time in our home and are no longer, but that's part of the foster network. And I love it. I love the fact that, we got to grow our family in a cool and unique fashion that is a little bit different and unique. So I love it. Yeah.
So 20 and a half years ago, the world was a little different. How did you all meet?
My wife and I met at Trinity Baptist College in Jacksonville, Florida. I joke that it's a little hole in the wall college at this point, but we both ended up there. She was from here in Pennsylvania. I was from the western side of the United States, and we just kind of ended up there. I was in my sophomore year. She was coming as a freshman, and we met and started dating on September 11th as the world was changing.
Wow.
I don't know why my mind was in I got to date this girl, and buildings are falling in New York and all this.
Right, yeah. But I got to get on a date tonight. Oh,
that's right, man.
That's great.
Yes, sir.
Oh man, that's awesome. You started dating there out of Bible college, and then did you go right into ministry right after that?
Essentially, yes. We left Jacksonville in 2004, moved back to Kansas, where my family was from, where I was from, and spent just 1 year kind of off, knowing that we were going to pursue missions. We were going to be missionaries to Mexico, Latin America, essentially.
Oh, wow.
And so we took 1 year before we went full-time deputation. And I have always been 150% person. When we started deputation, we left on a 17-week trip. And no income. It was just by the grace of God, we're going to see what happens. And
Amen.
My gosh, we formed our faith in those moments. I tell you what, 3 months into that, it would have been November of whatever year that was, 2005, I think. Wow. And our monthly deposit at the beginning of the month was $20. Ooh. And I was like, okay, God, this is going to be fun, but we're going to spend this all in one place. And we went to Starbucks and got coffee.
Oh my goodness.
And then it was just okay, God, what happens next? And dude, I tell you what, who is it? Blackaby, that talks about a crisis of faith. Yeah. Every person, every man needs to go through a crisis of faith moment where it's all God or not at all. And I don't regret a minute of those moments of my life.
Yeah, they shape you, they form you into the man that God is making you to, is forming you into, is making you into be.
100%.
Man, okay, so before we get into that, because I know we talked about a little bit of that, that's going to lead us into our discussion. I know that. I want to talk just a minute now. So you said you and your wife, you have one biological child and then the foster care. How did you get into the foster care network, and kind of talk about that experience for just a minute?
So when our tenure in missions was over, we kind of resigned that part of our lives in 2010 and moved into a pastoral role. And all the while, still, our son was born in 2007. He's Costa Rican. He was born in Costa Rica, has dual citizenship, all those fun things.
Oh, that's cool.
And so it was never a moment of like, hey, let's try for another baby. It was just, we never not tried, right? It was just, okay, God, next. And nothing ever came next. A whole nother story for a whole nother time. But my wife had some medical problems that was preventing. And so we got to a spot, I remember this very distinctively, where we're on an afternoon, whatever afternoon it was, we're watching The Blind Side while my son is taking a nap. And the Blind Side movie, if y'all remember the Blind Side. And we got to the end of that movie and we both looked at each other and it was like, foster care. We need to start foster care. And it was within like 5 days. We had interviewed multiple different foster agencies and started the process, started the paperwork.
Wow.
And that was long and grueling. It took us about a year to get our first foster case. And that was a whole new world that we didn't even know what to expect. And a whole new element of faith that was going to challenge us and pressure us and push us to the very limits of our belief. But it ended up with us adopting 2 little boys that desperately needed a good, loving, safe Christian home. And that was like a drug for us. It was like, all right, what's the next one? And oh my gosh, yeah. So I would be an advocate for foster care for anyone who needs to talk through it.
Wow, that's awesome. Now, just talk about that for just a minute. So you bring those 2 boys into your home, and then are you? I don't know if you're still active with the foster care network, but how long were you active if you're not still?
We are retired from foster care.
Yeah.
For the time being, we have this nice, beautiful, big, huge house now that we could accommodate a few more kids if the Lord sees fit to move us in that direction. But we, I can't actually tell you how many years I think we were in it. We started in 2012. I think we wrapped up our final adoption in 2016 and kind of retired from foster care in 2017. So it was a good 5-year stretch for us. And like I said, several different kids that were in and out of our home. Our first case was supposed to be a very short term, 90 days. And we went to the hospital to pick up it was very mixed. It was a 5-sibling set, and we were supposed to take 2 of them. One of them was supposed to be a black baby and a white baby. And we get there, and these are the whitest white kids I've ever met in my life. And I didn't know, we didn't know what to expect. I mean, we had to take them to the hospital. They had open wounds, and
oh my goodness,
it was awful. And then to hear their story, it was just heart-wrenching and tragic. There was tons of abuse that was happening in this home with one of them was 3 months old and the other one was 18 months old. So they'd already had an education in the toughness of life. And then for the next, so remember I said 90 days. Yeah. These kids were in our home for 774 days before we could finalize adoption. And it was a grueling roller coaster of a ride. So but now they're ours and they're safe. And I'll be honest with you, they are now 13 years old and 11 years old. And they are both still dealing with medical repercussions of the beginning of their life. It is tragic. This is what foster care is.
Yeah. Wow. And it's so great that you guys were there and able to open your home and care for them and love them like that. It takes special people, man. That's so cool. And
I love that you said that, but I'll be honest with you, it was more of a blessing to us than to them and to anyone else. This was a gift of God for us to step into.
Wow. Amen. And so now you come out of missions, you're into the pastorate, you've got the foster kids and things. And so what was the pastorate like for you? And then kind of talk about that transition over into where you are now.
Sure. So for us, leaving missions was, it's got its own story of its own that we won't dive into today, but it was naturally what's the next step in ministry for us? And so we, no offense to youth pastors that are listening to this, but I thought that I was going to have to be a youth pastor. And I remember making all those applications thinking, God, no, please no. But I ended up getting hired at a church here in South Central PA, and I was hired as an associate, but an associate that preached every Sunday. They had set up, I thought this was really dumb but creative. they had set up a second congregation running simultaneously in like what they called a multi-purpose room. And this was branded as like, super contemporary. It was very high end, very energetic, very light showy. And so I was hired to lead that. And I grew it down to like 20 people.
There you go.
And in over the next 7 years, we had grown up to over 1,000 every Sunday.
Wow.
Mind you, like I was just one part of that, and 1,000 people were coming to my side of the congregation.
Oh my goodness.
So this got to a spot where it was like, all right, this is we got to do something. This is crazy. So that church launched into a multi-campus mentality, and I kind of led the way in launching their first multi-site. And we did that again. We went from zero. We had about 20, 30 people that came with us to launch this second campus. And when I resigned my position just 1 year ago, we were averaging almost 700 a Sunday. So wow. We did a lot of growth in a very short amount of time. And it was fun, and it was thrilling, and it was just amazing to see the life-changing moments that were along the way. We brought that foster care feel into the church. And I think I was telling someone yesterday, I think we can chase down probably 30 children that are now in homes because of kind of our influence and leadership in that church. And it was amazing to be a part of. But at the same time, I will kind of say this, that in mid 2022, I felt the Lord tell me, your time here is coming to an end. And I didn't know what to do with that. I mean, I was a career, lifelong ministry person. I mean, 11 years old, Josh Tice and I worked together at West Branch Camp back in Flagstaff, Arizona. And I attended that camp when I was 11. Wow. And I remember sitting on the front row of their little chapel there and hearing the speaker talk about, dedicating your life to full-time Christian service. And I was like, yes, God, yes, that's me. And so, I'm coming to this place in 2022 where the Lord is saying, you're done. You're done with ministry. And I was like, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? I didn't know what to do with that. And so I had to really articulate what that meant for me and what that looked like. But it came to a point where I recognized that I'm either going to honor the Lord with what he's telling me to do, even though I don't understand it, or I'm going to kind of dishonor the Lord and continue in this. And whatever carnage could come from that, I'm going to be responsible for. So January 30th of last year, I sat in front of my lead pastor and slid a letter across the table that he did not see coming. Oh, wow. And he didn't have a clue. And it just felt like I needed to go about it that route for a lot of different reasons. But 30 days later, I was out of a job and into whatever was coming next.
That's a big step of faith right there.
It was enormous.
What I love is you were following God the entire time. It was the Lord's leading. It wasn't emotion. It wasn't situational. I think oftentimes men we can get into situations, and I was just having a conversation recently with someone. Our emotions could begin to drive us, but we have to ask the question: is God leading in this, or am I just wanting to do this? And discerning that, I know we've talked a little bit. Those two can line up. It's not wrong for them to be the same thing.
100%.
But when it comes to difficulties and trials, just because it's the easy way doesn't mean it's the right way. And what you did there, just following the Lord into your current season, man, that's just phenomenal. So 30 days, you're out of a job. How did Kevin Elworth coaching come to be?
Well, I have always known and just kind of recognized that leadership development is my core. And I had gone through a very popular, and I would advocate for all of you to take this study. It's by Craig Rochelle. Have you heard of him?
I once or twice. Yeah.
He put out a resource way back when called the Kazone Experience. And it is mind-blowing. And so one of my roles,
that on my phone, like as you're talking. So
it is not the Calzone Experience; it's the Kazone Experience.
Spell that for us. Can you do that?
CHAZOWN. It's the Greek word for vision, if I am not mistaken.
Okay.
So part of my job as a pastor back in the day was, small group coordination or whatever, and getting all these people into classes or whatever. And so somebody came to me and said, "Hey, I want to lead this." I was like, "Okay, cool. Knock yourself out." So just because I didn't really have anything else to do on a Wednesday night, I ended up sitting through this class and just kind of watching other people do it. And I was so hooked. I was like, I need to do this myself. As I got to the end of this class, the very purpose of this class is to help you walk away with a lifelong vision statement. And I got to the end of this class, and this statement like downloaded to me, Spirit of God. My vision statement became to help people experience an amazing God in an unbelievable way. And then my idea became, well, how do I do that? What do I do with that? What does that even look like? And so I began to put together ideas to challenge or encourage people to take steps of faith, because that's my experience, into what might God want you to do and how might God want you to do it. And honestly, by the end of my tenure at my church, at the church I was leading, I had a month of every summer where I was developing people to preach for a Sunday, because I'm like, man, if I can do this, I can teach someone else to do this. And, I had this, the idea is that every person, every man of God has one message that God would want to speak through them. And how do you craft it? How do you create it? How do you articulate it and get it to a place where people actually want to listen to it? Because let's face it, not every preaching pastor knows how to preach well.
There you go. There you go. There's a hard truth.
Step on some toes here for just a minute. So I had a fun time with that. And so when I got to the spot of like, what do I do with the rest of my life? It just became like, I just want to help people become better leaders. I mean, I don't know about you, Dustin, but I recognize in our world today that there is a deficiency of leadership, especially strong male leadership. And
absolutely.
Honestly, if I can affect that in any way, shape, or form, that's what I want to go hard after. And so I turned that into I turned all of my focus into business. And I kind of walked away from the mentality of church leadership. And I said, you know what, I want to do this on a larger level. And if I can affect this on a business leadership side, I could do a lot of work. And I'll be honest with you, in 1 year's time, I feel like I've had more pastoral leadership or pastoral ministry than I actually did as a pastor.
Wow.
And it's blowing my mind. It really is.
That's awesome. So you launched out Kevin Elworth. What is the name? Is it Kevin Elworth Coaching, or is there another name? That's
Kevin
it.
Elworth Coaching.
Make sure I got it right. That's it. Good. So you launched out, and then so how long did it take you to get to the place to where you were? I guess you replaced your income. I'll put it that way.
I'll let you know.
Oh yeah, I love it, man. I love it.
I'm not there yet, bro.
Living by faith. Okay, good.
I'm not there yet. It is very much
an entrepreneurial journey, though.
It really is. And I'll let you know, like, God is, like, he is faithful. He is providing. He is blowing my mind. Like every other entrepreneurial thing. And I'll be honest with you, you gotta loop some of these pastors in this too, because y'all are doing some entrepreneurial work.
Absolutely.
There are many, many days where you want up and you want to wake up and you want to burn it down, and you want to quit, and you want to throw in the towel, and you want to say, hey, God, do you even see that I'm still here?
Wow.
Did you see that you called me into this? And I have been tempted so many times, and thank God for like my godly wife and, a couple good godly friends that remind me of the purpose that I stepped into, because I would love to go get a W-2 job right now get a consistent paycheck, but that's not what God called me to. And so I got to keep believing that he called me to something that he's going to manifest.
Amen. And that is really living by faith right there. And that's awesome. And I love that you're living that out. And I think that you would agree some of the reasons you're able to go through the difficult days that you're even facing, in this season is probably because of some of that deputation time and those lean times where, it was like, it's either all God or nothing at all. And so we talked a little bit about defeat and overwhelm, because that's exactly how I would feel if I only got $20 in a month and had to go on deputation. And I don't even know if that buys a month of ramen. And so, how would you say that time has helped you even now, and relate that over to some of the guys out there?
So we're dabbling in really kind of a larger level element here, but your number one enemy is fear. Fear is a product of your adversary, and he will use that on every angle to be able to annihilate, paralyze, and essentially destroy you. When I got really well acquainted with what fear was and started making a daily attack on that fear, I began to actually make headway in what I needed to accomplish. The fear and faith are diabolical opposites. They cannot mix together. You cannot be a man of faith and have fear at the same time. And let that sink in for just a minute, because you all are men of faith. So if you are wrestling with fear, it's time to ask some larger questions about why you are struggling with fear. When I started getting really well acquainted with what I was afraid of and attacking that, I could actually start making some headway on who God was telling me that he wanted me to become. But while that was still in place, I could do nothing. All I could do was stay frozen. And man, there's a whole other narrative that's at play here, but that was really the beginning of it for me.
That is awesome. I love that. And okay, so you identify what you're afraid of, and then when you're going in through the battle, whatever it might be, whether it's an entrepreneurial journey or just the various different things that we could face in life, what is it that helps you kind of keep pushing? So you've identified the fear, you're kind of fighting through it there. Is there some specific things you might be able to tell our guys of just in those moments of defeat to be able to keep pushing?
So life is a daily battle, right? And so everything we do, in fact, what I do right now to teach my business clients like how to win in business or how to become ridiculously successful in business, is that really it all comes down to your processes, your routines, your habits, the things that you habitually do. They really define the what you're going to become. And so there's a lot of writing on this right now, right? Craig Rochelle just wrote the book about winning the war of your mind. And
James Clear's got Atomic Habits, a big one.
Atomic
I just
Habits.
listened to that one in January. That was great.
Powerful book. One of my favorite books. In fact, the book I used to kind of write how I was going to launch a ridiculously successful church is the book called The Power of Habit. And fails me who the author of that book is right now. But that book is all about business.
I just saw that one on my Audible this morning because I just finished. So I finished Atomic Habits and The God Ask, and now I need a new book. And that was one that came up. And so now I'm going to go order that one. Thanks so much.
Yes, great book. So what I did through the help of a coach and counselor, my life has changed right now because I invited a coach into my life. In mid 2021, my family and I had taken our huge next step of faith. We'd sold our house, what we would call our dream property at the time. Our next big dream was we want to build our own house and have a big plot of land. So we sold our house, bought 24 acres of land up in the mountains, and launched into this phase of let's build our own thing. Wow. It was going to take everything we had, and it was going to take more than 2 years to actually do, and it was going to wreck every part of our lives, but it was the next plan of God. During the midst of that, a pastor friend of mine said, "Dude, you need a counselor," and so I invited one into my life, and I met this dear, sweet, she must be 75-year-old pastoral coach from Frisco, Texas. And we started meeting every other week on Zoom. And my wife was part of that process as well. And she began to help me recognize how crippled my life was because of fear. And I'll be frankly honest with you. I've got all these faith stories and how do you survive on $20 a month? My fear was the fear of poverty. I was literally afraid that at the end of my day, at the end of my life, I would have nothing left. And so every part of me became like, how do I not lose anything? How do I not lose what I have in my life, in my hand? And so I was living on a survival mode and survival mentality. And through her help and through, some just godly influence, I put together a daily battle plan. And my daily battle plan was I woke up every day at the same time and I would do the exact same things. I would go for a run and I would do some exercise. And then I would get down on the floor. I would journal a little bit. I would read the Bible a little bit. And I would fall into a daily habit of reading through what I had pre-written. See, the power of battle is not creating the battle plan when you need it the most. It's creating the battle plan when you're healthy in your mind and you know how to fight. And so what I did was I created this like 7-part prayer, and it became, God, today I put to death my fear of poverty. God, today I invite you to renew my thinking. And so all these are scriptural, right? I put a verse beside every one. The most powerful 2 for me was Romans 12:2. I think that's got to be top 5 most powerful verses in all the Bible. God changed the way I think, and God loved my wife through me today, God. And today I put to death my willful sin. And these things became the core of who I was going to become. And I'll be honest with you, it took me 18 months of doing that day after day after day after day after day before I actually woke up and said, you know what? I'm not the person I was before. I'm a totally different man. I'm a totally different person. I'm a totally different father and a husband. And everything about me was different because of a battle plan I put in place.
Man, that makes so much sense. And what I love is just your confession there of like, that wasn't an overnight success, right? 18 months. I think many guys get into either coaching, and while coaching can help take you further faster, but they get into some program, they get into something, even discipleship, and believe that, okay, I'm in here, so within 3 weeks, I'm going to be X. Like, no, it's probably going to be a while. I was just talking to a business owner the other day. He launched out into a franchise opportunity and he believed it was God leading him at the time, and it was going to be an awesome opportunity. However, it turned out the other person ended up being kind of a lowlife and was almost running things into the ground. And then some other stuff came out, yada, yada, all things happen. Okay. And he was saying, he's like, I know God was leading me to that, but I don't know. Like, I don't get it. Like, what was the deal? But now, here, probably about 2 years later, that franchise is going to be purchased by a church planner on a seller financing plan for a company or a franchise that can generate at least $250,000, if not more, in revenue. Okay. For like $115,000.
Wow.
That church planner is now going to have that income as he's planting his church. And I told the guy, I said, listen, don't, and he said, because he was saying, like, I don't know if it was God or not. I'm like, hold up. Just because it didn't happen the way you thought it would in the time frame you thought it would, didn't mean it wasn't God. Look what God's done with it now. Yes. And that's the same thing with us. We get started in things, we fail, we get defeated, we get overwhelmed, and we start to give up instead of either pushing through or realizing that, hey, the victory is on the next day. And so we can't stop. We got to keep going.
You're opening a can of worms that is something that's very passionate to me about. When I left my pastoral role, I did, you always hear the president writes a letter to the next president, leaves it in the desk, whatever. So as I was leaving this role, I wrote a letter to the next pastor of the church that was going to, who's going to be hired after me. I didn't know who this was. I didn't, whatever. So I wrote a letter, and in part of this letter, I said this. I said, don't, and hear me out now. Don't put your stone down, okay?
I love statements that begin with that.
Stop putting your financial trust, all of your financial trust, in the church. It's time to ask a bigger question, because and here's where I want to help you think for just a minute, okay? Proverbs 3:5-6 doesn't say trust in the church with all your heart. And I think this is where we get it a little bit wrong, is that we are placing all of the financial component of our life in a church where God said, I need you to trust me. And at some point along the way, my wife and I started asking questions like that. How do we increase our income without asking for a raise? And my goodness, that was actually paved the way for me to be able to walk away from a job, even though, it was the largest part of my income. It wasn't all of my income. Yeah. And that was really helpful and healthy. And, I see a lot of pastors that are asking some of those questions today, right now. And I know this is not the whole audience that's on here. But the defeat and overwhelm that's coming out of these pastors is largely financial. And if you would start asking a different question, you would get a different answer. My whole thesis in life right now is this. Write this down, okay?
You got it.
Your future is defined by the questions you are willing to answer. So you need to start asking some better questions and forcing yourself to come up with better answers. I think we'll dive into this part of this into your extra component, because I do have a secret to this.
Absolutely. Well, I love that. And because one of the secrets, if you will, for me personally, a guy told me years ago, and he said it, and I just kind of looked at him like, I don't get what you're talking about. He said, you don't know what you don't know. And it clicked finally at some point in life. And that's where the value of a coach, a mentor, a counselor, a third party coming into your space and being able to speak life, truth, ask questions that you may have never thought of, and that can help literally change the trajectory of your life in a God-honoring way.
Yes. Now, let me finish that statement for you, because it's only half done.
Yeah, go for it.
You don't know what you don't know, but you're also guilty of what you don't know.
Oh, I like that.
That's the hard part of that.
That's good.
Yeah.
I'm going to add that one to my little box there and bring that one out.
Yeah, use that.
Kevin, I love it. Thank you so much for your time on this one, guys. Hey, listen, Men After God, I'm so grateful for you checking out another podcast for us here. Don't forget, we've got our Men After God book coming out titled Becoming a Man After God, Achieving Success with a Thriving Faith and Family. You'll be able to access that and get some pre-orders here soon. We'll put links in show notes as soon as all that stuff comes out. It's just going to be a wonderful time for our network as we continue to see God bless the expansion of it later this year, and a few big announcements that we are looking forward to sharing with you just as they come down the pipeline, and just again rejoicing in what God has done in and through the Men After God community even thus far. Which leads me to say thank you to our subscribers, our founding members who jumped on the first 6 months of our existence, and then those that have come on in one of our bronze, silver, or gold tiers in the last few months. We're so grateful for you, and that's why I'm thankful for guests like Kevin here, who is going to shoot some extra content with me to give just to you, to say thanks for being a subscriber. And I can't wait to hear the secret he's going to be sharing with us about asking these questions. If you're not a subscriber and you'd like to be, you go to patreon.com/menaftergod, sign up there between $5 and $15 for one of our tiers. Not only do you get our extra content, but you get access to merchandise, coaching calls. There's a few different things in those tiers that you need to check out. So go ahead and head over there, patreon.com/menaftergod. Connect with us on Facebook, facebook.com/menaftergod, or join us in our group and connect with guys like myself, Kevin, and others that have been on facebook.com/groups/menaftergod, and we will be able to see you there. Kevin, before you go, let the people know how they can get in touch with you. We've got business owners and entrepreneurs out there that listen to this, and I can recommend Kevin for his coaching. I've not went through it personally, but I've had coaching conversations with Kevin where he's just been a huge blessing to me, so I know he'll be a blessing to you, and I want you to know how to get in touch with him. Kevin, how can they reach out?
Super simple. My website, kevinelworth.live. kevinelworth.live. It's all contained right there. You can book a call right at the top of the page, and I would love to help you. I'll offer a free coaching call to anyone who asks for it. Let's sit down, let's go through some of that, and let's really unpack the details and the implications of who you want to become. That's really what this is about. So thank you, Dustin, for having me on today. It's been a privilege and a pleasure.
Absolutely, Kevin. So glad to have you. Men After God, I'll talk to you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Men After God podcast. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes, and keep up with the show by following us at facebook.com/menaftergod. You can also reach out to Dustin personally at dustin@seekconsulting.us with any questions or for coaching on being a man after God. Until next time.